Hey guys, we're live with our fourth Q&A. Hopefully we won't have any technical problems this time like last time. Hopefully this uploads well as well. Maybe I'll take a little time to say just as we start, I realized that making these Q&As, making the schedule exclusive to only patrons on Patreon was about the worst idea I could do for the channel. So that's going to change. That's going to be public now, the time. So I can tell you right away the next Q&A is going to be Tuesday at 1 Eastern time. And then for the Patreon tier, we're just, there's going to be a different reward, and I'd kind of love to hear what you'd like to see for a reward for that. It's probably going to be like maybe polls or something, or maybe questions that you could ask in advance that we'll start the Q&A with. Something like that. So, hi everyone. Hi Dave. Weekend is good. Yeah. So, fire away with the questions and let's get this thing started. Hi Matthias. Hi Sharif. Here we go. Beethoven, Opus 10-1, first movement. Opus 10-1. Is that a sonata? Bar 233. I've got issues getting octaves in the right hand smooth and precise, especially the short eighth notes. Matthias, is that a piano sonata, Opus 10-1? I don't know if I actually have those. I have 3 volumes of Beethoven sonatas, and I'm missing the first one. That's something I should pick up. Right. C minor. Yeah, I don't have the score with this one, so that might be a good thing. Maybe I'll pick that up, and next time we can look at that, because I don't have that one anywhere actually. Getting octaves in the right hand smooth and precise. Yeah, let's look at it specifically maybe next time. I have to find the score to this, otherwise I don't know exactly what we're talking about. So, will I do more tutorials in French? I definitely should, and I don't do enough tutorials in French. Yeah, I'll definitely be doing more. I just don't do them very often, which is probably a shame because there's a lot of people I think that would still listen to them in French. So, do you mental play? Yeah, if I understand what you mean, it's kind of like, practicing away from the keyboard, just like looking at your score and listening to the music. That's really good. Uh, it's kind of enjoyable to do the more you do it because you develop the ability to be able to listen. And that's actually a good thing, especially if you're quite advanced already at the piano. Then it's something you can work on more, is developing your ear and listening ability. That's a very good idea. So you can just like study your score, for example, away from the piano, refrain from playing, and try to hear as much as possible while reading the score. For me, it's really a listening thing. It's not like a sort of some people probably do that as well, like kind of like mentally rehearse, like you imagine yourself actually playing. That's good too. Kind of like an athlete, let's say before a performance, like you see yourself go through the performance before. That's a very good idea. But those are kind of two different things. Both are good. One is this kind of visualizing yourself playing, going through the obstacle course and overcoming all of the obstacles. The other one is working with the score and just listening, exercising your ear to be able to hear what it is that you want. So you kind of become a some sort of internal CD player in a way. CD, not that we use CDs really anymore, but kind of like an internal music player where you're creating the music in your mind. And this is really good to to hear different things, refine the inner ear and hear as much as possible, as well as imagine how it is that you would like the music to sound, which is a really good thing. So that's actually a good thing to do. You can even do it. Let's say you can take the time to like actually play it through in your mind, but it's something you could even do in the middle of a practice or a rehearsal. Especially with like chamber music, it's really good when you're discussing things with other musicians or maybe a teacher, and how such and such a play should sound is actually to take a break from playing if you're constantly practicing and actually just come to your inner ear and listen to it. How is it that you actually want it to sound? So for example, does this make sense to do a crescendo here, and kind of hear that with the crescendo and say, that's interesting. Okay, now let's try it. So that's a kind of mental practice that's very useful. Schubert Impromptu, Opus 90, number 2. Is that the... I think I have that one here. Let's see. Hopefully. I'm working up this collection of scores, guys, so that I'm able to answer your questions as good as possible. And I recently just picked up a pile. I know I had those Schubert Impromptus. Now I'm not sure where they are. But is that the where the heck are those Schubert Impromptus? I'm not gonna like, I probably loaned it to someone. Now that I realize I don't have it here, I must have loaned it to someone who didn't give it back. So yeah, that'll be another one to take note for. I'm gonna have to find the Schubert Impromptus. Okay, I think that's the one you're talking about, is the E flat one. Yeah, maybe we can go into that, or we can do a Skype lesson also if you want, and we can go into the specifics about that. But I have to find those Schubert Impromptus. What do you think of tools like Melodia for ear training? I've never heard of Melodia. What is that? How can I improve arpeggios in the final of heroic polonaise? Okay, let's look at that. Let's get our heroic polonaise out. I'm gonna find this one, don't worry. Arpeggios in the end. Okay, where's that thing? Where exactly? Because as I guess you mean these. That's the only arpeggios. Okay, here's a fun question. How can we improve that? Well, okay, first of all, make sure you're using the wheel is going to help. So that means that the wrist is lower, so that you're doing more of this sort of thing and less reliance on the fingers like this. This is finger movement, and this is, it's kind of like if you play this as a chord and then you roll the chord, you automatically do that already. When you do this, when you roll a chord, you don't go ta 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 with the fingers. And if you do, poor you. So this is kind of the same thing. Now the other thing that's a little complicated in here is, so probably at the top, getting the fifth finger here on the D, which I'm sorry you can't see. So try to do this in the front. So that means you're going forward. See how when the arm goes forward, the wrist goes up, because this happens. So yeah, you can't see that. I'm sorry. Let me just move that a little further. It's going to be harder for me to read. I find actually is I hurt my fourth finger a little bit here because of the friction coming here. So I don't know if that's a problem. But definitely the wheel here and coming in the front here, coming forward, it's really pushing in with the arm. This is going to help. And then the wrist coming down here. And then if we go more into details, start softly here. Make sure you practice. Start slowly like that. That's the other thing. Don't try to connect the thumb like this. That's very hard. It's more like, imagine you're bringing the thumb with the arm. So there's more of a jump here than a passing the thumb underneath in these arpeggios. Sorry. You can also obviously break it up. Start from the D in the middle to do this. Yeah, so see, if I was practicing this now, which is not, it's not too bad, but it's not 100% accurate, I would probably take the time to really slow down and really feel the position. Try to rest in the keys so you can feel where you are. This was a little problem here. So keeping the thumb a little bit more like this when you're hitting white keys, and like that on black keys is going to have more accuracy in the thumb. Let's see how many more ways can we screw this up. Maybe getting these notes to sound. I don't know if that's a problem for you. I feel like passing the thumb to the highest D is probably one of the more challenging things in this arpeggio. You could practice that, just going up to the D. You could also do an octave. Since you have an octave, instead of breaking the octave, you could do it at once, like that. See? So if you miss it, then that's good, because that means you have something to work on in there that's probably going to improve the overall thing. So that's a jump to practice. So put those two Ds together in one octave. Again, you can start on this D like I just did. And that should help. And then work on just this. So that's another thing you can do. You start from the end. You just have this with the technique we just described, where this is going forward. And this, by the way, with 1, 5, and 4 at the top of this last octave. So now we have da-da-dee. You could probably like back up a little bit. And once that's really good, then come down to the bottom. Yeah, so that should give you probably, hopefully, a lot of ways of practicing that. That should help. Okay, we got a bunch of questions here. Can you please tell me how to get a good pitch? Well, here's the thing. Some people say that pitch is you're either born with it or not. Obviously some people are born with it, but I don't think that means you can't develop it. I have seen some things, some programs, like it was probably this thing called perfectpitch.com. I don't know if it works. I don't know anyone who's tried it, so it might be a bit of a gimmick. But one of the things that I know someone who did try it. It was some of my students who were like very old couple, and one of them actually his hearing was so bad that hearing a whole scale going up or down, he couldn't tell if it was ascending or descending. But he did try that thing. I think it was perfectpitch.com. And again, I don't necessarily want to endorse it because I don't know how well it works. But one of the things they were saying to practice is playing an E flat and an F sharp, because they have a very different timbre. It's very different on those two notes. So he would say that first thing in the morning to play the E flat and the F sharp and listen to the different timbre, and probably like sing them as well and try to tell the difference between the two. How to develop perfect pitch. That's probably a good thing to look on the internet. I can't say I have the secret to it. I just developed it over the years. There were certain pieces, for example, that it was very clear, like, the one that really always came to mind was this one, this E flat Haydn sonata. I would always hear that E flat, and if ever I would play that piece in my head, I always had the E flat. So from there you can work with your relative pitch. So if you have a piece that you're really you're able to identify at least those notes, then you can slowly develop your pitch, your relative pitch from there. I don't know if that helps. I mean, you have to be able to do that in the first place with a piece, but maybe try and see if there's some pieces that you're working on now, when you play it in your head, see whatever key that is. You don't know exactly what key it is, but play it in your head and then verify on the piano if that was actually the right key. That's how I started to develop it. You can't learn perfect pitch when you're an adult. Well, I don't know if that's true. You know, I don't know many people who have developed it, so I can't say, but I'm hesitant to say that it's impossible to develop it when you're an adult. You'd have to find out if anyone has, and I'd be surprised if anyone hasn't. When you sight read a piece, what do you look at first? Do you look at notes like the interval, or do you just know? Yeah, I think we'd have to go to like very beginner sight reading. If you're having to look at intervals, you probably would look at intervals. If it's very um, not super beginner, but I mean, obviously in a very beginner sight reading, you wouldn't even have intervals. So once you have intervals, that's already like an intermediate kind of sight reading. I think so. If you see a sixth, you should be able to identify very quickly that that's a sixth. But eventually, that's something that you won't think about anymore by sight reading, with a habit of sight reading. So yeah, it should be something that becomes automatic. But if it's not automatic, you have to practice it. So, for example, when you see an octave, do you know that it's an octave? That one's fairly easy. Or just looking at this, eventually you have an octave with a note in between. So eventually that fourth, it has to be something that it kind of uh, you cognize it very quickly. So it's not something that you're going to think about for long, but start by identifying the intervals. That's a good idea. And that's about first, what to look at first. Yeah. I think just the more you sight read, you won't have to think about these things at all. Eventually these things will become very automated. The key is to sight read regularly. And I just found something yesterday. It was a Kempler, I think it was called. Those looked like pretty good sight reading books. It was a German thing. So that's something to check out. They advanced very quickly. There was like 3 volumes, but by the first one started very easy things, and then by the second volume it was already quite advanced. But that could be good. Do you have any tips on playing the coda of Chopin's G minor ballade without tension? There's another score. Oh, I do have that. The G minor. Let's find that. That's probably in here. Those are there's no end of the music that I need to buy. Okay, these are fun scores because they're all marked up. Unfortunately, my G minor ballade is not quite as marked up because I haven't really learned that piece. I taught it once. Let's see, Polonaise Fantasy. There it is. Okay, so where specifically are we looking at in the coda? Playing the coda without tension. Okay, well, you know, if you can identify certain places, maybe we could look at that specifically because it's a pretty long. But I just assume you're talking about that thing. How to play without tension in general? Well, yeah, there's something about this music that might make you emotionally tense up actually because it's so agitated. So try to perhaps see if that's a problem. If the fact that, you know, when you get to this, you know, that you get very agitated in a way that tenses up your hands and you lock up here, then maybe first of all focus on not locking here. Second of all, maybe disconnect from the emotional part from time to time. So try to play it without so much emotion. I haven't looked at this in a while, so I'll just do it slowly. So it doesn't have to always be something very emotional when you practice. It's nice to do it, but some of the best advice is actually to disconnect from the emotional things so that you can actually relax. That might help. So just by playing it slowly also and a little less emotionally, you can also have the time to listen to so many amazing things, which you have to do at some point when you're learning this, because it's so rich. So again, that kind of tension might make you a little tight in this part of your hand. So the other thing that would probably make you tense up in there is not knowing what technique to use. So see something like this, you have a wheel. Now you have rotation. That's all rotation. So if you're trying to do it like this, da dee da dee da dee da dee, it's going to be very tense because that's a lot of work for the fingers. But if you go da dee da dee da dee da dee, rotating this, that becomes much easier. So again, da dee da da dee da da, now you have a wheel. That's the end of the rotation. So know when the rotation starts and when it switches to wheel. That's very important. So when the wheel ends as well, when that switches to rotation, wheel here, rotation, and then wheel. This da-dee-da, you have a wheel. And when you have two notes at the same time, they should always be in the front. Even in the rotation a little bit. Is not only like this, but there's a bit of movement going in the front. Same here. This is a classic place where we want to be going forward. Again, the wrist goes up because the arm is going in. So this is happening. Yeah, so that should help. And for the left hand, same thing you have. at all the technique that you have in there. Do it slowly so you have all of these wheels. Here rotation, rotation here. That's all rotation because we're going up, down, back up, down, back up, down, back up. Now we're going down, down. So that's wheel. That's gonna help. I had to blow my nose, guys. I have a little few allergies this morning. Pardon me. So that should help for that. So if you're tense again, if you don't have the technique, you're going to be more tense. If you're too letting the agitated emotional aspect of the music get a bit too tight in your physical body, then that's also not helping. So practicing slowly, listening, and keeping everything as relaxed as possible, and then gradually, incrementally raising the speed without becoming tight. So once you start to become, if you're able to do it slow and relaxed, then that's very good. So you can slowly, incrementally speed up. But when you reach the point where it becomes too fast, that you've become tight again, then it's too fast. So keep working on it slow and maybe take a break and come back to it another day. Okay, let's look here. We got a lot of questions here. Zana says, I think the way I read music is wrong. Could you tell me, how did you learn to read music? Interesting. How is the way you read music wrong? Well, how do you read music? That's curious. One thing I notice is that some people, they're very good at memorizing things and playing without looking at the score, and for other people it's the opposite. They're very good at reading what's here, but they're unable to look at their hands. Usually it's the former, actually, but both people have both problems. So try to maybe find a balance. I don't know if that has anything to do with your problems, Anna, but you know, for sure, the more it's like learning to read words, reading music. The more you do it, the more skilled you'll be at it. And it's not about reading since there's so much music, it's a little different than learning to read actual words, because you have to read a lot of different music in order to become good at it. If you only read things that you know very well, or that you're working on the same thing all the time, then it's not going to be the best sight reading thing. So I would suggest to get really easy sight reading books. There's buy some sight reading books. Start at level 1. You know, and I don't know what level you're at, but they're very easy things, and it's kind of, people don't want to do it because it looks so ridiculous and easy. But the idea is that you should be able to play it pretty much perfectly in one try, maybe two, sometimes three. But if it takes 3 tries, it's probably too hard, or with only a few mistakes depending on the level. I wonder how good sight reading is. Okay, this is a sight reading day. I wonder how good sight reading is for someone at his level. I was reading Liszt could sight read Chopin's etudes. Imagine that. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, you know. So the higher your sight reading level becomes, it becomes feasible that you could actually sight read things like that. And the other thing I don't know is that, how well was he actually sight reading them? You know, because someone who's very good at sight reading could, let's say, you know, sight read, but not very well, some of his etudes. So I don't know how well, but apparently Chopin was very impressed. And there's even a letter where Chopin writes that it was a joint letter, that Liszt had written the first part and then Chopin wrote the second part, that they were writing to, I can't remember who, but a friend that they both had. And Chopin, his really a poetic way of writing, he says something like, I barely aware of what my pen is scribbling. I can barely concentrate because Liszt is in the next room playing my etudes, you know. And he says how he would love to steal his ability, how he was jealous of his ability to play them. So that is quite impressive, yeah. Sonate pathétique, troisième mouvement, third movement. I've got problems with the last part in the polyrhythmic section. I can't manage to play it clearly. The polyrhythmic section in the last part of the Beethoven Pathétique Sonata. Where do we have that? Polyrhythmic section. That must be that, right? That would be the only polyrhythmic section I see. Okay, so I guess your problem is with polyrhythms, right? Maybe you can just clarify that for me. I'm always having to scroll this thing. I'm probably going to switch to a laptop soon. Okay, there we have it. With the last part in can't manage to play it clearly. Playing it clearly. So I suppose you mean playing the polyrhythms clearly. I don't know exactly what your problem is. Like I said, we could have a Skype lesson and look at it in detail and see exactly what that is and what you can do to make it better. But let's see what could be some of the common problems we would have here. I mean, if it's a polyrhythmic problem, you just need to practice polyrhythms more. There's a lot of videos on that. I made a video recently on that and how you can practice and stuff like this. For sure, I mean, we can look at the technical aspect of this. What do you have? This is something you guys should be able to answer right now because this is very clear. Rotation. So it's up to you to make sure that you're not using this half as much as you're using this. When you're trying to learn the rotation, you want to use this barely. The fingers barely move at all. It's coming from somewhere more further in the body than the fingers. That's the arm here where this is twisting. Feels like it's twisting in the wrist. And then in the right hand, you should know by now very well what this is if you've been listening to my videos. This is a wheel. So you want to minimize this and go more with this so that you're using this to play da da dee da da dum ba da dee da da dum and not just like that. So now the real challenge is to get this in the left hand and da da dee da da dum at the same time. Da dee da 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 na 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 na. That's hard. But I imagine it would help your issue about clarity. Again, maybe you can clarify to me if that's a polyrhythm problem that you're having there or something else. Okay. I'm learning Beethoven's Concerto number 3. Bravo, that's a lovely concerto. And it is a real problem for me to get my wrist relaxed while keeping my hand structure solid. Rounded hand with strong fingers. Do you have any advice? To get my wrist relaxed while keeping my hand structure solid. I'm not a fan of rounded hand. That's just something that you mentioned, rounded hand, but there's things like rotation. It's so having fingers like this is I'm not saying we never use that, but it's much better to have them more like this. So I don't know if that's going to make a difference with your wrist, but the idea with the things like the wheel in general is that you have this sort of flexibility. See, so if the wrist is tight like this, well, you can't really do a wheel. The whole arm tightens up. So the idea is that the elbow doesn't move. The elbow isn't doing this, but this is able to move. So yeah, again, we can go into specifics of that somehow if you can be more specific. But being like this doesn't help for a lot of things, especially if you have rotation. Do I have that concerto here? Third concerto? I think I do. I don't know what kind of things you have in there, and if there's places where you're specifically stiff, or if it's everywhere in general, maybe you could be a little more specific with the place, and we can look at some of the things that might be making you stiff in those places. You know, see if you're trying to do this. With fingers that kind of a rounded hand. I know I doubt that's the case for you in this place, but there's a lot of rotation in this. So it's very important to establish those places, da dee da dee da dee da dee, and of course there's going to be. Now wheel. What is this? Again, rotation. So now see if your hand is round. I think that might be part of your problem, is just trying to have such a round hand. This whole thing about playing like you have apples in your hand is such bullshit. It's good maybe for children who are learning, who have this problem, who will bend the fingers like this. I would call that, my teachers call that bananas. I like to tell them it's bananas because it makes like a banana. So then we say to have like round hands like this, so that you learn to play on the tips of the fingers. But once this is strong enough, it's much better to have the hands more like this. See if that makes a difference in the tension you have in your wrist, and maybe get back to me on that. And let's see, do you recommend extremely slow practice with very relaxed body to practice this? Again, I mean, extremely slow practice is good. What I always say is vary the tempo. There's some things that are easier to do a little faster, and there's when you're trying to learn technique that's different in both hands and putting it at the same time, then you do have to go very slow. But if it gets so absurdly slow, you'll reach a point where it becomes almost impossible to connect movements and gestures together because it's just too slow. Um, that might be a good thing if you're too tense. Then is that kind of slow practice. I would say mix it up. Maybe not just slow practice, so you're not so you have some vitality as well, and don't become too mushy in there as well. You can learn perfect pitch when you're an adult. There's lots of studies on it. Google it. Great. Well, thanks for Googling that. I'm sure you can. By the way, I can't thank you enough for your invaluable videos. They have helped drastically. I also love the way you play. So beautiful. Thank you, Simon. That's really nice. I'm happy they're helping you. I developed perfect pitch when I was young, like 7 years old. Nice. Good for you. I just tried to recognize some random notes. I was wrong at the beginning, and then it became better and better until perfect. That's the kind of thing that it seems to be. Is it's just something that you develop more and more. See, string players, they have to work with intonation all the time, so they naturally have a better sense of pitch. It doesn't mean that every string player has perfect pitch, but they're working with intonation, so that you learn to hear the subtleties on a better level. So yeah, it is something you're always improving. I would agree that. Well, that was the case for me anyway. Uh, so I think the most moment opportune to develop perfect pitch or good pitch is when you're young, or when you start music. For sure, everything you do when you're young is easier. Same with technique. It's so much easier to teach it to children. They get it right away very well. It's because we have all these bad habits with technique, but perfect pitch is probably a similar thing. Uh, Thank you. You say my channel is underrated. Solid videos every time. Favorite YouTube channel by far. Thanks, guys. That's really nice. Who is your favorite composer? I have so many. That's hard to say. I love Ravel, Rachmaninoff. Uh, Bach is always a favorite. Haydn too, and I couldn't discount Beethoven for sure because there's times where there's just nothing in the world better than Beethoven. It's so satisfying to play. Ravel, I appreciate the kind of uh, not only the variety in his music, but there's oh my God, it's just so he's such a master. So amazing what he writes. He's definitely, I love playing Ravel. It's hard to say what's favorite composer, you know, like how can I not put Bach in there? And it depends what you're in the mood for, Sometimes this you're feeling more an Chopin kind of period, and you just like trip on his music in a good way. That is that his music is trippy. Are there any techniques on how to improvise? I'm sure there are. That's something I don't teach, and I could probably learn from whatever those techniques are because I have kind of a self-taught improvisation that could use a little instruction. So I just found this channel. What's her name? I think it's like Nahre, Nahre, and she had some things about improvising in there I thought was very, very interesting. Really, really interesting pianist and very talented improviser. She did that video on, like Happy Birthday and all the different um, all the different composer styles, and how to improvise like Bach and stuff like that. So maybe check her out. I think that was the name of her channel. I'd have to check that, in which case I'll add it in the description here at the end of this. I meant the coda of the first Chopin Ballade. Okay, we looked at something totally different. The first Chopin Ballade. You talked about the fourth. Sorry if I wasn't precise enough. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, the first. Well, let's check that out. Why don't we? Because that might be very interesting. Again, I'm gonna have to find that one because I think I have it in one of these books here, which are kind of like anthologies, very very old books. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but it is supposed to be in there. Let's see, Chopin Etudes, Scherzo. Etude. It's not in that one. I don't think it's in that one either. Probably this one here. Chopin Preludes, Waltz, Impromptu. It's not in there either. Maybe I don't have it. I don't know where I was playing it from all the time. I think it's in these. Yeah, see, I know I have the second one in here. These are such old books. There's like 8 volumes, 4 of which I have. Someone gave me them a long time ago. Yeah, see, I have the second ballade here. I guess I was always, like sight reading it from a library copy or something. Maybe I printed it out at some point. Unless it's in the last book here. Let's see. Ballade in A flat, opus 47, G minor, opus 22. Here we go. Page 2128. Yeah, here we go. Okay, well, let's look at that. So, tension in the coda. And I believe you gave me some specific bar numbers 208 to 237. I don't have bar numbers in here anyway, but. So that's where we have this. Yeah, okay, so, we're probably going to talk about similar things as in the other one. Again, you'd have to try to see why is it that you're tense, and what is it that makes you tense in this, that where you're not tense in a different place. Make sure you're doing those accents in the front. See, that's where we want to go, in the front and over. So in the forward to the accent without going far from the key. You're already on the key. You're just giving a push from the arm like this to do the accent. And then you're going down like that to get the other part. So that's that. Now, sorry, you can tell I never learned this, but I did sight read it a lot of times. If you have this kind of, you're always trying to connect things in one greater gesture with more of the arm or more of the body, let's say, than just doing stuff like this. So, but so again, when you have this is something you can practice. That should be very relaxed. And then when you have this, that's a rotation. So the rotation is on, always find the side where the beat is. So on the thumb. Now, that's all rotation. So it's especially between the 1 and the 2. Don't worry about the 5th finger. It's more. This stuff. So watch where you're going between the 1 and the 2. And then see when you have something like this. Well, you have rotation, but there's also a wheel in there because we're going up. Ta da da dee, ta da 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 da. So again, work on making sure this is as relaxed as possible between the thumb and the 2nd finger for the rotation. Well, there you have a nice chromatic scale. So that's all wheel stuff. And hopefully that helps a little bit. Give me some feedback on how that goes. I just realized the video is mirrored. I wonder if that's a result of using the front part of my camera. Interesting. I'll have to check that. Thanks for letting me know that, Dave. I've always been wondering how exactly that is. So yeah, I'll have to check afterwards, see if using the back camera is better. The thing is, I need the front of. I'm using an iPad to do this, but what I might. Yeah, I don't think this is going to change for now. So, but thanks for mentioning that. I'll have a look at that. I can never identify notes by listening. Any recommendations to improve hearing? Could you be a little more specific, Calvin? What exactly do you mean by identifying the notes? You mean by finding the right pitch? You're looking for the right pitch, or you're trying to hear something that you see in the score and when sight reading? Is this a sight reading question? But for sure, everything that you do to improve your here's something you can do also. All these things that you're doing to improve your ear, like sight reading, doing that kind of mental ear practice, like we talked about in the beginning. That's going to improve your hearing gradually. It's going to get better and better. I was talking about this with some student. I had the same thing. There was some rather modern piece where there was a strange figure in the left hand, and by whistling it, I had to be able to whistle it. I was never able to whistle it. Well, not never, but I had to work on it for a while until I actually learned the pitch. Those kind of things can be very, very helpful. Try to whistle some things, or you can sing or whistle if you're too shy to sing. So that could help. I just use intervals. This is back to sight reading to try to remember, or reading music, using intervals to try to remember the notes. Well, you have to be able to identify the notes very well within a certain range. Of course, when you get past like, E, I don't know the number, which one that is, but like getting past C with the 2 lines, E with 3 lines, that's like forgivable if you can't know what those notes are. But everything within the range that's on your lines, the 10 lines, you have to be able to know those notes like immediately what they are. So maybe use like flashcards or some kind of app that gets you to identify notes if you're having a hard time to do that. Because if it's just like, let's say you have an E and a C, and you're not able to read that it's a C, you have to count every time in your book. So you try to memorize that it's a sixth, but the E and then you don't read the C. Then that's kind of problematic. You need to know both those notes exactly what they are. When I play the cadenza at the end of Chopin Nocturne, Opus 8, number 2, okay, I use the 3, 2, 4, 1 fingering, okay. But it feels awkward. I have to play my fingernail I have to play on my fingernail with my third finger. Is this normal? Let's look at that. Okay. I'm happy I have most of the music that you guys are talking about. We seem to talk a lot about Chopin etudes and nocturnes a little bit, I guess. Okay, 3, 2, 4, 1. That's what I have here in this Dover edition. It might depend on the shape of your hand, but I find I can't straighten that third finger either. It depends how your nails are. Everyone has different nails the way they go in. So obviously, if the nails are too long, I mean, they have to be cut short. I just cut mine yesterday, so it looks something like that. I leave a tiny little bit of white there. Don't forget to use the rotation. Here's what the rotation's going to do. You'll be playing less here and a bit more here, because see, it's on the side. So you have, and then the thumb, it's on the other side. See? So they're like that. Usually our hand is naturally shaped like that. The 2 were kind of here. The 3 is a little more there. The 4 were more on the side, and the 5 were almost completely on the side. That's just the way the fingers are. But with the rotation, it's even more so because you're bringing that down there. That might help. 3, 2, 4, 1 is not a bad fingering. Another nocturne I never learned. But, if you were going to use another fingering, I'm not sure what you would put. You don't really have a choice to put a 3 on that C flat. I can't think of another finger. I don't think there's an alternative to that. But see if the rotation helps to get it a little bit more on the side. When to play with a pulling, grasping action of the fingers. Ooh, we have to do a video on this, guys. And when to play with a pushing, stretching motion. This is a really interesting thing I want to talk about. I'm going to have to do a video on this specifically to explain it properly. I'm going to redo the video also I just did about the lower body. I see there's some things I mentioned which aren't quite right in it. Just, before I do it, at least I can explain. I was talking about this exercise, pushing here and then bringing the legs up. But I think I said that this pushes in from the sacrum. It's the opposite actually. It's as if you're pushing outwards at the very lower back where the sacrum is. So that's like at the hips. So you're kind of pushing forward with the arms and pushing outwards with your the lowest part of the spine, and that's kind of elongating your spine, and then it's easy to find this sort of movement where you're pushing forward from here and not with the upper body. But to come to your question about fingers grasping, um, well, the thing is, we actually can do both at the same time. This is the thing we don't realize. There is something of this kind of emotion. And what you can do is actually practice this, you know? So it's not like that. It's actually coming from inside the hand with these muscles here. Kind of like, you know, as if you want to put water, hold water in your hand, you're going to do something like that, right? Not like this, but trying to make a sort of indentation inside the hands. And see how that brings the fingers in? So something Marc Duran would always say was to do this. And then you can work on, let's say you have something like... Well, you would pull in on these notes, kind of like this, really like pulling in the finger in a way that does this with a hand, you know, on each note. So there's something of this movement, but that does not negate the movement that's going forward, which is coming from the arm. See, it's not the fingers that are pushing forward anyway. The forward movement is controlled by the arm, so you can have the two at the same time. So you have these two things happening at the same time. See, I can pull in a little bit with the fingers, but still applying the weight and transferring it in the front. So yeah, I think that's something we're going to slowly start talking about more. It's very good, that kind of grasping, grip pulling action of the fingers that you're talking about, and that we're talking about with this. It's very effective for having a control over things. And yeah, I come to the C minor toccata because that's really the piece that I learned this in. I think that's the right key. Well, when doing this, the problem I was having was kind of doing those triples too fast, and losing control over that. So here was the practice that cured it. Was, again, like, you know, I would take each note and pull on that finger. You're like really pulling it in, and it should kind of do this with the hand. The hand should go like that when you pull on the note. And then each finger separately, the fourth one and then the fifth one as well. The thumb is hard to do. So then makes all the difference in the world for that kind of control. So when you're losing control and you feel like it's because of your wheel, you become sloppy, then use that practice. Do you play other genres other than classical? Well, I try to, but I don't have much time. Let's say, you know, I play a bit of, sometimes in the concerts we play a bit of like more popular music, you know, like there's a new trio that I'm starting now with Nadia and this singer, actually, where we're playing like French songs like La Vie en Rose, you know. I put that one on Patreon. The whole concert's there. I'm actually going to post that one on YouTube soon. We're gonna do a whole concert of like popular French songs from France and Quebec. So they're kind of old-fashioned songs, kind of pop improvising. I'm just not half as good at that damn thing. It takes a different kind of skill. It's something I would like to learn, but you really work on knowing the chords very well first, which some of you probably are very good at if you do that sort of genre. I definitely appreciate it, and I'm very open to it. I've always wanted to do jazz, and I felt like, I barely have enough time to learn, do an adequate job of everything I have to perform. So it's so hard to like throw in a new genre where I would probably have to take lessons, jazz lessons, or I could teach myself. But anyway, thank you so much. You answered my question perfectly. I will try out your tips after the live stream. That's great, Simon. That was the Beethoven concerto, right? I think so. Yes. Okay, good. Well, I hope that helps. How to play Moonlight Sonata, third movement, more smooth with the arpeggios. More smooth with the arpeggios. Well, again, guys, we're coming back to technique all the time. This is going to be much more smooth than this. I'm repeating myself so much, but I think I have no choice. You have so much more control on this sort of thing than if you're doing it with the fingers. Can you see the difference where the fingers are moving and where I'm bringing it with the arm? There's a minimal movement of the fingers when the arm is doing this. Then you have to figure out which way is the wheel going. If you're confused about this, watch the video I put of the wheel in the Essential Piano Technique tutorials. When the right hand's going up, the wrist is down. That should be a lot more smooth. Again, if you want to do a Skype lesson, then I can look at exactly what you're doing, and we can fix that. I've got a problem playing the G minor harmonic scale going upwards. Okay. Playing the E with the third finger and the F sharp with the fourth feels so uncomfortable. Harmonic scale G minor. Might be the shape of your hand. I'm not sure. Why might that be uncomfortable? Do you feel like it's hard to stretch the four all the way to the F sharp? Like it's kind of there, yeah. Can't see it as well, but it's kind of like the fourth finger is missing the F sharp. You're a little bit more there. I don't know if there's a way around that. Something that helps me is to tilt the hand, if it's kind of straight like that, a bit more like this. So instead of being there, see, coming a little bit that way, it's a lot easier to get the four for me if my hand is like that than if I'm like that. So we're changing the angle more like that. If the piano's in front of me, I'm playing a bit more sideways with this part of the hand closer to the piano like that. You might have to bring this out a little bit to do that. That might help. What was that? Yeah, let's see. That might help a bit. Thanks very much. Your lessons are really helpful. Thank you, Zana. I'm happy that's helping. Nahar Sol, that's her name. Yes, exactly. Good afternoon, Marcio. Is that Marcio? Question about Beethoven Opus 111, first movement. Yeah. Do you think that the transition from the maestoso to the allegro should be only a change in pulse, or should it be also a change in tempo? Let me see. Let me just pull the score out. I'm not gonna try to do that without the score. But there we are. See, okay, now here's a place where as a teacher, which is why it's a great idea for all of you to teach, guys, because you'll learn so much by teaching. You know, and most of you, a lot of you are already advanced enough that you can teach someone, like who's several levels below you, that you're more advanced than. So now, instead of playing it, which you could do, I could play it right now to answer your question, or I could take the time to mentally hear it. Then you're working on the ear. So, that's less interesting for you guys because I'm just going to be quiet while listening to it. But, it would look something like this. How does this go? Okay. Yeah. See, I don't want to do it right now because it's going to be really boring for you guys. But basically, I'm just playing it in my head. Establishing the pulse and the tempo. So, but let's get to the question. So this is about one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, one. Oh yeah. This is a great question. Thank you for asking this. I played this a while ago, so I just have to see. I think the tempo does change, but it might very well stay in the pulse. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and play it. We're not going to do this listening thing. Yeah, it's a complete tempo change. I don't think there's a pulse that stays the same in there. So here, but what you should do is count. So here you have, if you count your eighth notes in the bar before the triples, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Keep counting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 40. Oh, this is such a good piece. Thanks for bringing that one up. So there we go. So it's a complete tempo change. Da, 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 da. Like if someone plays an A, ask me to identify the note. I might think it's a C. Okay, so you're talking about perfect pitch. I am thinking of buying a Mason and Hamlin model, 5 feet 8 inches long. Do you have any experience with Mason and Hamlin pianos? I've played on them not so often, but I liked the ones I played on. Every piano is different, so you can't just judge a piano by its brand. It's not bad. So, the thing is you have to try it out, see if you like it. How is it a new piano you're buying? Is it a used one? I always recommend buying used pianos because I like the sound much more on them. But on used pianos, if they're really old, then you have a problem. I didn't even know they make new Mason Hamlins. I thought those were like old pianos. You have to, check, make sure the soundboard isn't broken on it, or something like that. But something to consider, which you can do if you're in the market to spend a lot of money on a new piano, let's say like $20,000, you can buy a used one and restore it. And sometimes those sound very good, but you want to find someone who's very good at restoring pianos. So it all depends on exactly how old that thing is and how much you like it. What's my dream piano? Oh man. You know, again, like these new, brand new pianos, it's just like it's one of the shittiest things to play on because there's no life in the piano. There's something missing. Um, there's something also about the hammers. When the hammers are brand new, it's just really annoying. They have to be used for quite a while, and a piano that's used for about 3 years is much better. It's hard to say. Like, I mean, I love Steinways. I love the tone of the Steinways. I love Bösendorfers as well. But it doesn't mean that I love every Bösendorfer. There was one at this piano store here in Montreal, very close to where I live, Piano André Boduc. Well, actually, he only sells Steinways now, but he was a concessionary a few years back for Bösendorfer pianos. And they had one which was like a 1950 Bösendorfer, which was completely restored in Vienna or maybe in Wiener Neustadt. I'm not sure. It was so amazing. It wasn't a big piano, but it was so, you would just put your hands on it and it would play by itself. I think it's one of the pianos I have the best memory of ever playing was that one. But there's some pianos which just have a better kind of sound for, let's say, Debussy and Ravel, and some have a nicer sound for Haydn as well. Usually, maybe there's Debussy sounding piano, Haydn sounds good on as well. And then like Brahms and Rachmaninoff, it's nice to have a different kind of piano is probably the most ideal for that. So yeah, it's hard to say that there's one perfect piano, but I guess a really good piano would be one that's pretty balanced and you could play all those things on. I meant the third, but thank you. The third movement of the sonata. You played the first. Oh, okay. We're going back to Beethoven 111 here. Sorry about that. Was that your question? No, that's not 111. Now, to see there were too many questions now. I have to the Moonlight Sonata. Okay, the third movement of the Moonlight Sonata. Okay. So that's okay. Well, again, look at the wheel you have here. Why is it not smooth? Again, if you're playing like this, good luck. That's not smooth. That's very, very tiresome on the fingers. So connect it like this. So you kind of swing and then bring the thumb back. And then bring the thumb back. Bring it back. That's definitely going to be smoother if you're doing this sort of thing more. It's like, again, if we come back to this is not something that you could play if you were doing this. So obviously, Chopin is very smart when it comes to technique. He knows this. He knows how to do this sort of thing, transferring the weight by using this movement in the right hand going up in arpeggios to bring it from one finger on to the next without pushing down with the fingers or relying completely on the fingers. Thanks for answering my questions. Really helpful. You're welcome, Yustang. You're welcome, Matthias. Is the picture reversed? You're playing at the right end. Yeah, someone just told me that, Barbara. So it might be because I use the front camera of this thing, but it's the only way I can use the front. I'm gonna check and see if there's something weird happening again, but we'll do our best for these live feeds. Otherwise, I'm gonna need a second camera. which is possible. We might get a second camera actually very soon. So if that's upside down, we are going to fix that, guys. Don't worry. And if you wanna help me with that as well and support this channel, go on Patreon. There's going to be a link to Patreon in the description. That'll be a big help. Some people are already helping on there. Thank you very much, guys. So see, we're going to buy another camera probably to do this because I can't do this always from the iPad. Okay, what your favorite pianist of the... We're going to do a few more questions. Your favorite pianist of the 20th century. Favorite pianist of the 20th century? I think Michelangelo, maybe. But I also do love Glenn Gould. It's funny because to me they're like total opposites in the sense that I like pretty much everything that Michelangelo does, although he's not... I think he's amazing, actually. Glenn Gould, I don't particularly love everything he does, but there's some things about him and the way he plays certain things that I adore. So it's kind of hard to... Those two really come to mind. And, you know, maybe Rubinstein as well. And there's someone else I'm thinking of. It's not Horowitz. I'm not like a huge Horowitz fan. I don't dislike him. I do like him, but I'm not like a lot of people are just absolutely crazy about him. I mean, he's great, you know, but it was Julius Katchen, I think. Julius Katchen. There was another guy I heard recently. It was actually quite some time ago. I forget his name. I think he's Hungarian. He recorded all the Liszt transcendental etudes. Forget his name. But Julius Katchen and damn it. Here we go. What's his name? Shit, I can't remember. It'll come to me. It's gonna bother me now. But there's one of my favorite pianists who plays a lot of Liszt. Actually, I can't remember it right now. It's gonna come back. Sonate Pathétique, first movement. I can't manage to play the trills section. There's absolutely no rhythm when I play them fast. Okay. You mean where you have the... Is that what you're talking about? I think that's the only place where you have trills. That must be it. Okay, yeah, that can be a pretty common problem. So how do we fix that? There's a one thing we have to establish is there's two ways of doing this. Or on the beats or off the beats. So, you know, I don't know what's right academically. They sound very sophisticated on the first beats too. But they're going to be a little bit easier to play off the beats. I guess I would practice that if you're playing them off the beats. Okay, here's one thing you can practice for this sort of thing. Let me see, would this work now? I think so. You know, one of the things we have to do is lift the finger enough after it's done playing. Let's see what that does if we do this sort of thing. If you're having this problem where the second one doesn't repeat, then you need to do this. When you play the 3, lift the second finger to play the third finger. So it's like this. And then replace the second finger and lift the third finger. So that would fix that problem. But you don't want to get too far from the keys either, because the second finger has to come back very fast. I suppose a little rotation in there will help. A little bit of this. Now, if they're on the beat, that's harder. In which case, it's even harder, I think, to get the second one to sound. So that first exercise would help. Okay, you go up one note, but then you have this. So you can use kind of like this in the hand to go down on those 3 notes. So first you have to go up, so do the rotation, and then come down like this to play those. That will probably fix your problem. So you're coming a little bit this way to do the rotation, and then setting the hand that way. You can actually do this very relaxed. You just go this way, and then like that. Again, if you have that second finger, though, that doesn't sound, you're going to have to practice lifting it. Is it Shifra? No, it's not Shifra. Damn, what's his name? Well, maybe I'll add it in the comments when I remember it afterwards. I remember as soon as I hang up this thing. Have you seen Alec I don't know how to say this name. Greniuk? No, I haven't seen him play Hungarian 6 rhapsody octave section. How do you practice to get octaves like this? We'd have to look at that 6 rhapsody. I'd have to watch his video as well. But I've talked a lot about octaves in one of the other streams, and I have a video also, a few videos on it with the Chopin octave etudes. Okay, well, let's have a close look at that. And that might be our last question there, along with the next one. Should I change fingers on repeated notes, even if they don't have to be repeated fast? I would say no. You know, try changing them. Sometimes it works, but you don't have to change the fingers on the repeated notes. So again, it depends on the context. Sometimes it really is a good thing to do. But you know, if you have something like, you know, in this Haydn Sonata, the E flat major second movement. Well, you have something like towards the end. Let me just pull it out. Here's an example where you don't have to do those repeated notes like that. It's going to be at the end. I hope I have the right thing here. Yeah, I think this is what I was just thinking about. So here I wouldn't do this. You can, you know, but it's not the only way of doing it. If you work on going into the note, make a sound going forward into the note that you're repeating with one finger. You can actually make beautiful sounds when it's not so fast. When it's extremely fast, you're better to change the fingers. So work on going into the note to make the sound on one finger. Maybe not even letting the note come up entirely. Just working inside, like that. And okay, guys. Okay, the last question for that Liszt Hungarian Rhapsody number 6 octaves. I don't think I know that one at all. Is that like the there's a name to that one? I think I have a friend who played it. That's at the end. A lot of octaves at the end. I'm not sure where, or it's just the repeated octaves. Wow, there's a lot of octaves in this. Which one is this? I don't know this piece, guys, so. Yeah. Yeah, I remember this one. Well, yeah, I'd have to look at the video you were talking about and maybe look at this a bit more in detail. Because there's a heck of a lot of octaves in there. Definitely use 4 when you can. So let's say I'm practicing this, okay? So I don't have it right now. It's pretty fast. Well, I would make sure I have 4 on the black keys. Then there's probably something to do with this in here. There's so many things you can practice with octaves. You can practice just playing the thumb. That's actually pretty hard. See, I hear it fast, but I'm not able to do it yet. You know, I'd have to practice it, maybe take my time and find out what's the right tool. But where I would start is trying to move as economically as possible, because if you're doing things like this, you're using so much movement, there's a limit to how fast you can go. So is there a way of sliding like that, you know, without losing so much movement, but going very moving as little as possible from note to note. That's again why we're using 4, because when I have this, I just slide to the A, and then the 4th finger is already there. Don't even have to move. And then here we are. I'm having a hard time with this. Probably, you know what would probably help also? You know, you can look at the video I did on the Liszt Sonata, the octave section. That's not right. But I talked about resting in the keys in that video. That might help even in a fast thing like this. Yeah, I can't sight read it and do it that good, so it's something I would have to work on and find out how to do it. So, yeah. Okay, guys, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. This was a lovely session. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I realized that putting the schedule exclusively for patrons is about the worst idea for this channel. And I want to make it publicly for everyone. So so the next one is Tuesday at 1 Eastern time. And I'm going to find something different to do with that $2 award tier on Patreon. Probably like polls or something like that. If you have any ideas, let me know. I would love to hear what it is you'd like to see there. If you're in that tier, you know, there's very few people in that tier, but yeah, or maybe, you know, like questions that maybe we can start the Q&A with your questions if you can't make it. That's probably what I'm going to change it to right away. But the next live video is going to be Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So see you guys on there. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to support the channel, well, check out Patreon. That's going to be in the description. And the video should be up very soon on YouTube, hopefully with no technical difficulties this time. Let's see how that goes. So adios, peace out, happy practicing, and see you next time. Take care. Thanks.